Hello and welcome to Quiz Class. I'm your host, Ellen, and today we have 100 questions on general knowledge. This should be an easy one for you. Let's take a look at our Quiz Class awards. Let us know how you rank in the comments at the end, along with the answer to the bonus question. So let's begin. Which invention is Alexander Graham Bell famous for? Light bulb, telephone, or airplane? The telephone. Which ancient wonder was located in Egypt? The Great Pyramid of Giza, the Temple of Artemis, or the Colossus of Rhodes? The Great Pyramid of Giza. Which fruit is used to make traditional guacamole? Banana, mango, or avocado? The avocado. Who was the comedy partner of Stan Laurel? Jerry Lewis, Dean Martin, or Oliver Hardy? Oliver Hardy. Which music style is associated with the 1970s? Ragtime, jazz, or disco? Disco. Which invention is Eli Whitney best known for? The steam engine, the cotton gin, or the sewing machine? The cotton gin. What is the term for a word that is spelled the same forwards and backwards? Palindrome, synonym, or acronym? Palindrome. Who invented the first successful safety elevator making skyscrapers possible? Nikola Tesla, Elisha Otis, or Thomas Edison? Elisha Otis. Which European city is home to the Alhambra, a famous Moorish palace? Seville, Lisbon, or Granada? Granada. Which spice is derived from the dried stigma of a crocus flower? Paprika, saffron, or cardamom? Saffron. Who were the two co-founders of Apple Inc.? Steve Wozniak and Paul Allen, Steve Jobs and Bill Gates, or Steve Jobs and Steve Wozniak? Steve Jobs and Steve Wozniak. Which decade saw the introduction of the first color television broadcasts in the US? The 40s, the 60s, or the 50s? The 1950s. What is the next number in the sequence? 3, 6, 12, 14. Is it 36, 42, or 48? 48. Which cheese is traditionally used in Greek salad? Feta, ricotta, or halloumi? Feta. Which part of the brain is responsible for balance and coordination? Medulla, thalamus, or cerebellum? Cerebellum. Who is credited with inventing the World Wide Web? Mark Zuckerberg, Tim Berners-Lee, or Bill Gates? Tim Berners-Lee. Who were the famous dynamic duo crime-fighting team in DC Comics? Batman and Robin, Superman and Lois Lane, or Flash and Green Lantern? Batman and Robin. Which number is missing? 2, 3, 5, 7, 11, and then is it 15, 14, or 13? Followed by 17. 13. Which Italian dish consists of thinly sliced raw beef or fish served as an appetizer? Carpaccio, panzanella, or risotto? Carpaccio. Which part of the eye controls the amount of light that enters? Polar bear, iris, or Arctic fox? The iris. Which Asian city is famous for its Petronas Twin Towers? Kuala Lumpur, Singapore, or Manila? Kuala Lumpur. Which fruit is the main ingredient in the Middle Eastern dish baba ganoush? Tomato, zucchini, or eggplant? Eggplant. What is the collective noun for a group of crows? Murder, pack, or troop? Murder. Which blood type is known as the universal donor? O positive, O negative, or B negative? O negative. Which famous magician duo performed for decades in Las Vegas with white tigers? Copperfield and Blaine, Penn and Teller, or Siegfried and Roy? Siegfried and Roy. Who is credited with inventing the first successful airplane autopilot? Charles Lindbergh, Lawrence Sperry, or Orville Wright? Lawrence Sperry. Which European city is famous for its blue mosque? Istanbul, Vienna, or Prague? Istanbul. Which country is the origin of the dish paella? Portugal, Spain, or France? Spain. Who were the famous songwriting team behind many of Elvis Presley's hits? Rodgers and Hammerstein, Lennon and McCartney, or Leiber and Stoller? Leiber and Stoller. What is the medical term for the voice box? Trachea, esophagus, or larynx? Larynx. Which famous wall was torn down in 1989, symbolizing the end of the Cold War? The Great Wall of China, the Berlin Wall, or Hadrian's Wall? The Berlin Wall. Which African country is home to the ancient city of Timbuktu? Mali, Egypt, or Ethiopia? Mali. Which Italian cheese is traditionally used in tiramisu? Parmesan, mascarpone, or gorgonzola? Mascarpone. Which word means a mild or indirect word substituted for one considered too harsh? Euphemism, hyperbole, or irony? Euphemism. Which gland in the human body regulates metabolism? Thyroid, pituitary, or pineal? Thyroid. Question 36. Which pair of brothers are famous for their fairy tales, including Cinderella and Snow White? Coen brothers, Brothers Karamazov, or Brothers Grimm? Brothers Grimm. Which U.S. president delivered the Four Freedoms speech? Harry Truman, Franklin D. Roosevelt, or Dwight Eisenhower? Franklin D. Roosevelt. Which letter completes the pattern? A, C, F, J, O. Is it U, S, or V? U. Which Asian country is home to the temple complex Angkor Wat? Vietnam, Laos, or Cambodia? Cambodia. Which vegetable is also known as a courgette in the UK? Squash, zucchini, or eggplant? Zucchini. What is the meaning of the Latin phrase, etc.? In other words, and so on, or in conclusion? And so on. Which disease is caused by a deficiency of vitamin C? Pellagra, beriberi, or scurvy? Scurvy. Who is credited with inventing the first mechanical computer? Charles Babbage, John von Neumann, or Ada Lovelace? Charles Babbage. Which country was formerly known as Persia? Iraq, Jordan, or Iran? Iran. What is the missing number in the sequence? 1, 1, 2, 3, 5, 8? Is it 11, 13, or 14? 13. Which U.S. state is home to the natural wonder known as the Grand Prismatic Spring? Colorado, Wyoming, or Arizona? Wyoming. Which spice gives curry its yellow color? Turmeric, paprika, or nutmeg? Turmeric. Which word means fear of heights? Agoraphobia, xenophobia, or claustrophobia? Acrophobia. Which blood vessel carries oxygen-rich blood from the lungs to the heart? Pulmonary artery, pulmonary vein, or the vena cava? The pulmonary vein. Which duo starred in the films Road to Morocco and Road to Singapore? Bing Crosby and Bob Hope, Laurel and Hardy, or Dean Martin and Jerry Lewis? Bing Crosby and Bob Hope. Which scientist discovered the law of gravity after observing a falling apple? Johannes Kepler, Isaac Newton, or Galileo Galilei? Isaac Newton. What is the main ingredient in traditional Japanese miso soup? Rice, fish, or soybean paste? Soybean paste. Which word means a word formed from the initial letters of other words? Palindrome, acronym, or homonym? Acronym. What is the human body's largest internal organ? Liver, heart, or lung? Liver. Who was the British monarch during World War II? Queen Elizabeth II, King Edward VIII, or King George VI? King George VI. Which number completes the sequence? 2, 3, 5, 8, 13. Is it 19, 21, or 16? 21. Which European country is famous for the Cliffs of Moher? Ireland, Norway, or Portugal? Ireland. Which fruit is used to make the Italian dessert tiramisu? Lemon, strawberry, or coffee bean? Coffee bean. What is the plural of phenomena? Phenomena, phenomenae, or phenomenons? Phenomena. Which disease is also known as the silent killer due to its lack of symptoms? Influenza, hypertension, or tuberculosis? Hypertension. Who invented the first successful steam locomotive? James Watt, Robert Fulton, or George Stephenson? George Stephenson. Which pair of detectives were created by Agatha Christie? Cagney and Lacey, Hercule Poirot and Miss Marple, or Holmes and Watson? Hercule Poirot and Miss Marple. Which letter comes next in the sequence? A, D, G, J, and then M, N, or L? M. Question 64. Which U.S. state is known to the natural landmark known as Devil's Tower? Colorado, Utah, or Wyoming? Wyoming. Which spice is the main flavor in traditional ginger snap cookies? Cinnamon, ginger, or clove? Ginger. Which vitamin deficiency causes rickets? Vitamin C, vitamin K, or vitamin D? Vitamin D. Who is credited with inventing the first electric battery? Alessandro Volta, Michael Faraday, or Thomas Edison? Alessandro Volta. Which world leader was known as the Iron Lady? Indira Gandhi, Margaret Thatcher, or Golda Meir? Margaret Thatcher. Which number is missing? 10, 9, 7, 4, and then is it 0, 1, or 2? 0. Which Asian country is home to the Banue rice terraces? Indonesia, Malaysia, or Philippines? The Philippines. What is the main ingredient in the Middle Eastern dish tabbouleh? bulgur wheat, lentils, or couscous? Bulgur wheat. Which word means fear of open or crowded spaces? Claustrophobia, agoraphobia, or arachnophobia? Agoraphobia. Which pair of comic book creators is credited with creating Spider-Man? Stan Lee and Steve Ditko, Jerry Siegel and Joe Shuster, or Jack Kirby and Joe Simon? Stan Lee and Steve Ditko. Who is credited with inventing the first practical typewriter? Samuel Morse, Alexander Graham Bell, or Christopher Latham Scholes? Christopher Latham Scholes. Which African country is home to the Valley of the Kings? Egypt, Kenya, or Morocco? Egypt. Which blood type is known as the universal recipient? B negative, O negative, or AB positive? AB positive. Which country was reunified in 1990 after decades of division? Korea, Germany, or Vietnam? Germany. Which U.S. state is home to the natural wonder Carlsbad Caverns? New Mexico, Colorado, or Arizona? New Mexico. Which Italian city is famous for inventing pizza? Florence, Venice, or Naples? Naples. Question 80. What is the main function of white blood cells? To carry oxygen, to fight infection, or to produce hormones? To fight infection. Who invented the first mechanical reaper for harvesting crops? Cyrus McCormick, John Deere, or Henry Ford? Cyrus McCormick. Which famous ship was sunk by a German U-boat in 1915, influencing the U.S. to enter World War I? Queen Mary, Lusitania, or Britannic? The Lusitania. Which Asian country is home to the famous Ha Long Bay? Vietnam, Malaysia, or Indonesia? Vietnam. Which spice is made from dried flower buds? Allspice, cardamom, or cloves? Cloves. Which part of the body is affected by glaucoma? The eye, the heart, or the liver? The eye. Who is credited with inventing the first practical sewing machine? Samuel Morse, Elias Howe, or Isaac Singer? Isaac Singer. What is the next number in the pattern? 7, 14, 28, 56. And then is it 84, 126, or 112? 112. Which European city is home to the famous Sagrada Familia Basilica? Rome, Barcelona, or Paris? Barcelona. Which fruit is used to make the French dessert tarte tatin? Plum, peach, or apple? Apple. Which word means a fear of flying? Hydrophobia, acrophobia, or aviophobia? Aviophobia. Question 91. Which organ produces insulin? Liver, pancreas, or kidney? The pancreas. Which pair of TV detectives worked for the Miami Police Department in the 1980s? Cagney and Lacey, Starsky and Hutch, or Crockett and Tubbs? Crockett and Tubbs. Who is credited with inventing the first practical ballpoint pen? Thomas Edison, Laszlo Biro, or Eli Whitney? Laszlo Biro. Which country is home to the ancient city of Ephesus? Egypt, Italy, or Turkey? Turkey. Which grain is traditionally used to make risotto? Arborio rice, jasmine rice, or brown rice? Arborio rice. Which word means a word with the same spelling but different meaning? Antonym, homophone, or homograph? Homograph. Which European country is home to the Matterhorn mountain? France, Austria, or Switzerland? Switzerland. Which vegetable is the main ingredient in the dish Bubble and Squeak? Potato, onion, or cabbage? Cabbage. What does the Latin phrase vice versa mean? As soon as possible, in other words, or the other way around? The other way around. Which organ is primarily responsible for filtering waste from the blood? Pancreas, kidney, or spleen? Kidney. And our bonus question. Which scientist is credited with the discovery of insulin? Let us know the answer in the comments. And of course, don't forget to tell us how you did with our Quiz Class Einstein rewards. Thanks for watching, and we will see you next time. Bye-bye.